I made it. Nice. Hey, what's up? My name is James Cool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com, and I am joined by Pablo for the Week 13 NFL DFS Slate Talk. For those of you who have not joined us before, this is a heavily game theory and leverage-oriented show / podcast, whatever the fuck you want to call it. We hit on a lot of the situations and game circumstances rather than just the individual plays. You guys can get individual plays anywhere, but you come to us when you want to know things that give you Sklansky bucks and things where you can go to your friends and say, yeah, but if it would have worked, I'd have been rich. That's what we're here for. So, Pablo, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad to be back, and hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. The post-Thanksgiving slate is always interesting because everyone's kind of tired, and it's a smaller slate because of all the games that we had over the last few days. And should be fun. It's a really gross slate. There's 10 games, very low totals across the board. Like, we have no high totals in the slate. I think correlation is going to matter a little more on this slate than on prior slates. Although, interestingly enough, all of my early builds don't necessarily have bringbacks, which is, because a lot of these games are very lopsided. So it's still like the rest of the year. It's been pretty loosely priced on DK. It's just that the games are such low totals with some very, very clear cut chalk that you sort of have to decide where you're going to get your leverage, and there's only so many pathways given the number of games. So it should be a good slate. I think I personally feel like I have a very clear view of it, which is always nice. It doesn't mean that your attempts to beat the field work, but it is nice to sort of feel like you see it clearly, at least.
Yeah, for reference to what Pablo was saying with the game totals, we don't have a single game projected over 46. The two highest game totals that we have are Carolina Rams, which is 45.1, and Pittsburgh Buffalo, which is 45.1. Outside of that, every other game is below 45. We have a lot of blowout potentials. We have Tampa Bay, Arizona, which is relatively close. But then you have, the Rams versus Carolina. That's a 10-point spread. You have Cleveland, who's only projected to score 16 points. You have Miami versus New Orleans. That's 8 points. Seattle versus Minnesota. That's 9 points. There's a lot of kind of lopsided games here. And what that usually leads to is there's going to be at least one of these games that does not go according to script, right? Usually when we have slates like this, it's going to condense the chalk onto the spots that people mostly want to play. But with all of these low totals, it also opens up a lot of room for just like one or two things to go a little bit weird, which opens up a lot of value. So I obviously, as usual, I have not looked at the slate yet, but I did see as we were loading things up that Devon HN is projected to be 60% owned. So let's go ahead and pull up the models here and take a look at things. So I'm just going to sort by ownership, and HN at 60% projected ownership. The next highest is JSN at 34%. This slate, the entire hinge is just on HN at 60% owned. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, so we'll get into it here in a minute. I mean, to not beat around the bush, here's how the slate kind of sets up. We have essentially three pay-ups that people are focused on, which is HN, JSN, and Puka. HN by far like the heaviest mega chalk by a large country mile. We then have several running backs that are absorbing the vast majority of ownership. Those are beyond HN, that's Breece Hall, it's Kenny Walker, it's Kamani Vidal. And then there's a subgroup that are eating like a little less ownership beyond them, but those are basically the running backs. Like the running backs that everybody's playing is some combination of HN, Walker, Breece Hall, Vidal. And then there's a steep drop off after that to people like Kyron Williams, James Cook, Bijan, CMC, and for reasons that we can get into. It's partially pricing, it's partially matchup. It's partially just the fact that everybody's trying to jam in Achane, JSN, Puka. What that's doing is then people are essentially looking at their quarterback, and there's one of two routes. People are either trying to get up to Stafford or going mid-range to like Brissett, or they're going all the way down to Stroud. And what's interesting about that is, like, depending on who you play at quarterback this week, beyond their pairing options, their pricing is so different that it leads to very different build structures depending how you do it. And when we pull up our quarterback range of outcomes, is one of these does not look like the others.
Yeah.
That is CJ Stroud, right? And yes, he is going to be the cash game quarterback. And yes, I do think he'll get a little more owned than what we're seeing. I think he'll probably be closer to like 20% in small field. But because he's been out, and because the matchup against Indy isn't like some amazing matchup, I think the field is like a little more uncomfortable to click on him than they otherwise would be, even though he projects like this across the industry. And so you could sort of say, like, efficient ownership on CJ Stroud at 5K, which, by the way, like, he's got 3 really easy pairing options, which are Jaden Higgins, who's really cheap, Schultz, which is really nice because it's always fun to correlate your tight end, and then Nico Collins, who's Nico Collins. So you can either say, like, for small field, I honestly just think it's a bit of an overthink not to play CJ Stroud. Like, I really think for small field, it's a bit of an overthink. And I think you should just, essentially pick on everyone's fear of using CJ Stroud and just say, fuck it. Like, he's so cheap and he allows you to get up to some of the really good, strong pay up chalk that it's just not worth fading him. For larger field, I think the builds that you can get with Herbert, Stafford, a little bit with Josh Allen, although you can see his range of outcomes like isn't great. You see his 3X and 4X are like not nearly as good as Herbert or Brissett for that matter. That I think you're probably more focused on Herbert, Stafford, Brissett. And then the other one I'll mention is Sam Darnold. Lastly, I'll just mention, I think it's gross, but you could consider Tua just in a matchup against New Orleans, where Miami's kind of coming back from a bunch of injured guys, and they're favored by a good number of points. And it's a way you can actually play Tua with Achane, or you can just say that's a way to leverage off of Achane by using people like Waddle, who, by the way, projects as heavy chalk as well. So my bigger point here is that I think at quarterback, because the pricing between like a CJ Stroud and his pairing partners versus a Justin Herbert or Stafford and their pairing partners, because it's not just that Herbert and Stafford are both 1.5 to 2K more than Stroud. It's also that their pairing partners, Puka and Devontae Adams, and Herbert with Ladd, Keenan Allen, and Gadsden, all of those stacks are much, much more expensive than CJ Stroud stacks. It's like a double whammy because their pairing partners are also more expensive. So it's a bit of a decision this week in terms of, like, do you want to play, a cheaper quarterback who projects really well with fragility coming back from injury in a matchup that's so with kind of a middling total in a bunch of games that have middling totals, right? To be fair. Or do you say, fuck it, like, I'm going to play a good quarterback like Justin Herbert or Matt Stafford, who have good receivers, but you're giving up, you have to then force in like a bunch of value that's not super comfortable around them. And it's a trade-off. It's not, I've built lineups with medians and ceilings that are similar with both approaches. I think I prefer the Stroud lineups in smaller field, but I kind of get why people want to get up to Herbert or Stafford, and for that matter, Brissett.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hit a couple of comments here really quick and then touch on what you did. Did you miss the anime show? So I'm gonna be watching more anime tonight. Another episode of My Hero Academia dropped. It's pretty much the end of the season, and I'm stoked. It's been really, really good. If you haven't watched My Hero, you should. Houston D is going to kill Jones. The news is real about his leg. Yeah, I don't know if somebody has a fractured fibula, they're probably not playing.
He's playing, but I don't know how well he's going to play. Yeah.
Well, but I don't know how bad could it be? right? Like if it's like a
It's apparently
fracture,
like a hairline. It's apparently like a hairline fracture. I mean,
if it's a hairline,
yeah.
that's basically just shin splints. I've had hairline fractures, like in both my legs and both my arms from playing football, and like, yeah, they hurt, but I mean, I got way worse drugs than he got, and I was able to play. So I think he'll probably be fine, but I don't know how much he'll run. Is the thing. I think he'll probably be okay, but I don't know how much he'll run. Wide receivers and offense looked better with Mills. Yeah, I mean, I think that CJ probably had some things that were not going great for him early, but it was also a really small sample. Like CJ Stroud has shown that he can be good. I'm not super worried about that. And then last question here before I get onto it. Are we concerned about Indy's secondary in the Houston spot? That game screamed 17-14 and a non-starter in their own DFS. No, I mean, Indianapolis is a wagon, dude. I think that from a offensive upside perspective, I'm more worried about the – I guess I'm more worried about the Houston side, but I think the prices mitigate so much of it that I'm not super worried about it. Like, Stroud is just so cheap. If you guys have tuned in, we've just been harping on, like, why is the pricing so bad for quarterbacks all year? We've basically just been jamming quarterbacks under 5,500 for the entire year, and it's fine. Like, the opportunity cost for it is just so much better for these quarterbacks under 5K. From a, like, as I look at it, I think that Stroud, with everything I just said, Stroud is a great option in small field, in things like the $200 SE or the $400 SE, stuff like that. Like, I think that Stroud is a perfectly fine play. He's going to lower the volatility in your lineups, and he's going to be a fine option. I personally would rather look elsewhere, I think, just because I don't necessarily. I mean, for all of the things that were just said here, like, there's the Daniel Jones leg situation and Stroud coming off of injury and like gelling issues and offensive line issues and like all this kind of stuff, right? Like, that game absolutely could suck. As much as I like the Indianapolis offense and as much as I think that CJ Stroud is a better quarterback than Davis Mills, I am a bit concerned about it. The other, like, really chalk is going to be Justin Herbert, 6,500. I'd probably like to go there, but there's other quarterbacks that I would also just like to play on the slate that are not necessarily any of the ones that are like super highly owned. I still want to continue to try to harp on Kirk Cousins as an option with no Drake London. Like, he looked better last week, 16 for 23 with 199 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, that'll play at 4,800. That's basically what you're hoping for from CJ Stroud today or tomorrow at 5K. So like, those stacks are still super cheap. Darnell Mooney and Kyle Pitts makes for a really strong option with a condensed target tree. I think that Tyler Show is a totally viable option at 4,400, especially if everyone's playing Achane. You have Achane on one side, you stack up the New Orleans side on the other side, and he has viable catching options as well. And then the other one that I don't necessarily love, but has been brought up a lot, is the Cam Ward stack against Jacksonville. Cam Ward is 4,600. He does not project well, but his stacking options are just free, right? And that gives you the ability to stack anybody that you want, and it's probably not going to have a lot of ownership. The only other one I think that I would note is probably Jacoby Brissett, who is now appropriately priced.
And what's really funny, what's really funny about, I was going to bring him up, is that what's really funny about Jacoby Brissett is that, like, he's been super shocked the last 3 weeks because of how cheap he's been. Yeah. And now because they priced him up another $800 and because Trey McBride is finally priced appropriately, and Marvin Harrison is back. So people are worried that Marvin Harrison, who like probably won't be targeted because they don't like to use Marvin Harrison, it has brought Jacoby's ownership down to like nothing. And against the Tampa Bay pass funnel, which is, we know has been a pass funnel now for the last several years, right? So I think it's really funny that Jacoby is like not owned. And we're going to get to tight end, but I actually think tight end is like a really good leverage spot this week with McBride, who we have as the 7th highest median on the whole slate, including running backs and wide receivers. Because neither Jacoby nor McBride are projecting with much ownership in a game that, they should have to throw the ball like a million times. So I do think this is there are a lot of options. I mean, one of the nice things about the game totals being so low and like no median or ceilings being like outsized outside of those pay ups, which are HN, JSN, Puka, is that you can like pick your stack very consciously based on your field size and feel pretty good about it. Like I think there's a lot of ways to go, and that's fun. I mean, I've built 7 lineups for tomorrow, and I've got 7 different quarterbacks, so that's fun.
Just one stat really quick on Jacoby Brissett before we move on to running backs, which I just brought up. But Jacoby Brissett, even last week, threw the ball 49 times. He's thrown the ball 40 times or more in 4 of his 6 starts, and the other 2 were 31 and 36. He's just gonna chuck it. It doesn't matter if Marvin Harrison's back. The funniest outcome would be if Michael Wilson keeps a hold on the number 1 wide receiver spot.
He might. Like there was a bunch of coach speak, and you never know with coach speak. Obviously, it's coach speak, but this week their coach Gannon was saying, like, we're going to keep feeding Wilson. Like he's like, he didn't say that like he's our number 1. Obviously Trey McBride's their number 1, but they're like, we love Wilson. We think he's good. Yeah. And he also similarly said like a bunch of lukewarm stuff about Marvin Harrison. He was like, yeah, he's battling his confidence. And Marvin Harrison was interviewed, I saw on Twitter, and he was like, yeah, I'm trying to get back in the swing. Like, it's not, I think you can like pretty confidently play McBride Wilson again. And what's funny is no one's going to do it because they got priced up a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a really good spot. All right, let's move on to running backs. So you can see there's 4 running backs that actually project well, and then a whole bunch of guys that just project as running backs, right? There's Achane, who projects for 22.79. There's McCaffrey.
To be fair to Achane, and I am wearing a Dolphins hat, but he projects like a fucking god, right? I mean, look at his 2x, 3x, 4x. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, from like but there's another guy who projects just as well, and that's Bijan at what will be a quarter of the ownership. But Bijan's going to get more than 13% ownership. He'll be 20%. But like at 8,500, that's a direct pivot off of Achane. Now, I think that Achane is fine chalk. I don't, whatever. Like, if you want to play him, go for it. But it's worth saying that, like, if you run the pivot finder, you're going to see that Achane and Bijan Robinson are exactly the same play. And if you expand the dollar amounts enough, like, you can play any one of those 4 guys up there. The only one that is hard to justify is Jonathan Taylor, and it's simply because of price. But that being said as well, Jonathan Taylor seems like a sick fucking play on a slate where he's not going to be owned, and everyone wants to use the passing game for Houston. Like, Jonathan Taylor, in a similar way that Achane is a terrific play, Jonathan Taylor could be slotted in with a Houston stack and make it so that, like, that's the game environment that you attack. We talked a little bit off camera before this about how correlation is going to be more important this week, because correlation is more important when you don't have high totals. And, a Jonathan Taylor plus Stroud, Nico, Schultz stack just screams like game environment that makes sense, So running back, I think, like, very clearly there are 4 running backs that project well. And then very clearly there are 5 running backs that will get ownership. And so everything else is kind of like, do whatever you want. But I will say, this is kind of the first week that I don't feel like you just have to jam the chalk at running back. Like, this is the first week in maybe 10 weeks that I don't feel like it's just like, oh, just plug and play these running backs. I think you can do a lot with this running back.
Yeah, I think, like we said, I mean, I would say 70+% of ownership is going to be absorbed by Achane, Breece Hall, Kenny Walker, and Kamani Vidal. Like that's going to be like 70% of the ownership, maybe 60%. There's going to be a subgroup, which is going to be CMC, Bijan, a little bit of James Cook. Some people play Genty with like wish casting him to have a good game against the Chargers, especially because people are playing Herbert sacks. But I think that the other thing to keep in mind here is like it's kind of that indirect leverage component. If you're playing Walker, you're probably not playing JSN. And I'm not an MME guy, but like I think you want one of those two guys in that game. Like Seattle's scheduled to beat the shit out of Minnesota. It makes me like Walker a little bit more because I think people are going to jam JSN. And I just think it's like another way to play that game. The other one is Vidal, because Vidal, like you're not playing Vidal with Herbert, like so, and you're not playing Vidal with Gadsden. So Gadsden / Herbert stacks are not going to be unowned, and neither will JSN will be very owned. So I think it's important to keep in mind, I'm not saying you can full fade those games too, but the Chargers and the Seahawks both have two of the highest totals, and it's kind of like hard not to at least play JSN or Kenny, or consider some of the Chargers. So, but I do think some of these pivots like are pretty sick. Like I think James Cook is a super sick pivot this week. We had a week like this like 5 or 6 weeks ago. Remember that, where Saquon and James Cook were the pivots off of Jonathan Taylor and a couple other guys, and it was like that secondary chalk. It wasn't the Achane, Breece Hall, Walker. It was like the next level that went off, and I feel like James Cook is in the same position this week. Like Buffalo Pittsburgh actually is supposed to be one of the more competitive games. Like it's one of the only games that have 2 game totals over 20. And I don't know, Pittsburgh's defense isn't great. And it's a way to get, like no one's going to play James Cook. And like, he's only 7,600 in a game. He could easily, end up as a top 3 running back for the slate.
Yeah. Yeah. My concern with Kenneth Walker is that he just has not separated away from Sharps in terms of workload. Like I would be fine with him at 5,300. That's not a bad price.
He's really cheap. Yeah.
But it's a bad price if he's going to be 35% owned. That's 35% owned and playing in a spot where he's going to cede a lot of work to Zach Charbonnet. It's not a spot that I really want a lot of exposure to. I feel like you're kind of playing Russian roulette. Honestly, in that case, I'd rather play Sharps. I like no ownership. I don't have him projected well by any means. Projects for 8, but he's 4,800, and like he's still going to be getting quite a bit of work in that offense. So if you want to attack the team total, I think that like JSN is option number 1, and then option number 2. I guess it's Kenneth Walker, but when you factor in the ownership, I don't know that I want to eat 35% ownership on a running back that is in a straight up running back by committee. And then with Kimani Vidal, like he's probably fine, but we've also seen that he's extremely game circumstance dependent.
His floor is like substantially lower than a lot of other guys. His price,
yeah. He's like he will just straight up not touch the ball if they're trailing. They'll just straight up go to passing. So I think that just makes Charger stacks a lot more attractive to me. If he's going to be 30% owned, we know that they're a very game script dependent team, and that they're going to pass a lot if they get behind, and they're going to use Kimani Vidal a lot if they're ahead. So it kind of sets up some really easy kind of levers there, right? Where you end up with Kimani Vidal. If they're in a lead, then the Raiders going to be having to pass. So bring it back with Brock or something like that. And then on the other side, if the Chargers are going to be behind, then using somebody like Ashton Genty, which he's 6,400, projects pretty well. He's going to have no ownership. I think that he makes a lot of sense there at 6,400 as well. So I do think that when you kind of think about both Vidal and Walker, there are a lot of holes you can poke into them, and there's a lot of leverage you can be having on them. Breece Hall, on the other hand, you just play him. I think he's the best chalk of this mid-range at 6K against Atlanta, who's trash, just kind of up and down. I think that Breece Hall is probably the one that I would want to play the most, and his expected fantasy points is higher than both Vidal and Walker. Vidal's is only 11, Walker's 12.25. So, of those three, those kind of 3 guys that I think are worth mentioning. But then outside of that, you have a lot of guys. Jalen Warren is not an awful option with all of his receiving work. Kyron Williams, I think, is a terrific option at 6,600 against Carolina team that sucks. Ashton Genty, I think, at 6,400 is being left behind. James Cook, like you mentioned, 7,600. He's kind of in no man's land. So I think this is just a really good running back slate. I think you can pretty much, wherever you are in the price range, I think that there's somebody that you can play, whether you want to lower your volatility, whether you want to gain leverage, whether you just go for upside. Like I think that there's a running back that fits every bill here.
Yep. So let's talk about receiver, because my feeling about receiver this week is it's very dependent on your quarterback, and more than other weeks, because back to the correlation point, right? So what you can see right off the jump is that JSN and Puka both have a median and a ceiling that dwarf everybody else, right? Yeah. So like basically the whole field is figuring out which one or two of HN, JSN, Puka they want to play. Because those three players have a median and a ceiling that are so much higher than everybody else on the slate that it's hard not to try to jam at least one or two of them in. What's hard about some of these quarterbacks, to the point we made before, is that you start to look at stacks, and I don't particularly like skinny stacking certain quarterbacks, most of the quarterbacks that we have on the slate being most of them, because they don't really run very much, most of these quarterbacks outside of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Where you start looking at it and you're like, Stafford's expensive and Puka and Devontae are expensive. And so, we'll look at stack range of outcomes in a minute, but you'll see that the stack range of outcomes is not very good for them because of that. You look at Herbert, right? So Herbert, you've got Ladd, you've got Keenan Allen, QJ, if you want to go down to him, and then Gadsden. More affordable, but still not bad. Not terrible, not amazing. The one that sticks out is for sure Stroud, because you've got Nico, who's only 6,700, and then you've got Higgins, who's down there fucking sticking out at 3,900. Look at his range. Look at his 2x, 3x, 4x.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what makes Stroud so attractive for this game, is you've got two pairing partners that are so much cheaper with a quarterback that's way cheaper. And so you say to yourself, well, shit, I totally get the concern about Stroud against Indianapolis, but at 5K with Higgins and Collins, who are both cheap, compared to Stafford with Puka and Adams, or Herbert with some combination of Ladd, QJ, and Gadsden and Keenan Allen, and you're like, man, these are way more expensive stacks on a slate where I really would like to correlate. And you can skinny. I mean, you can do Stafford with Puka, but do you really want to skinny stack Matt Stafford? I don't want to skinny stack Matt Stafford. So the only other way to sort of stack, and I've looked at almost every combination. I mean, Brissett, McBride, Wilson isn't terrible. It's kind of along the same lines in terms of price as Herbert stacks. The only other thing you can do, which we'll get to in a minute, is we've got our one lifesaver on DK, which has been the case now all year, which is that tight ends outside of McBride now are so fucking cheap. So you can save yourself through the tight end. You can, instead of just using two receivers, you can say, I'm going to use one really gross one that's really, really cheap, but it's a way to get savings, is you can play Darnold with JSN and Barner. Barner's 30, it's 3K. And same thing, you can do that with Stafford. You can do Stafford with Puka, and then you can play min-priced, whatever the fuck his tight end is, that he's 2,600. So I would just encourage people, I think you should heavily correlate your receivers this week with your quarterback. And I don't think most of these quarterbacks are skinny stack quarterbacks. So I think just be willing to consider tight end as your pairing partner on a slate where you really want to correlate, instead of trying to force two receivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chris Olave at 8% is weird. I think he's going to be higher than that.
I don't think he's going to be, and it's the same reason that the Raiders guys are being suppressed, is because of their game total. Their game total is the Saints game total is 18 points. The Raiders game total is 15.5 points. So
yeah, but people have been playing Olave all year. They know that he's a target monster. They know that Show throws. Like, he had an okay game last week. He's 6,400. Everyone's playing Achan at Achan's going to be 60% owned. Like, Achan at 60% owned just tells me that there's going to be some amount of people that simply in their optimizer rules say have a bring back.
That's fair.
And play Olave. Right? Like, at 6,400, I just think he's just going to be plugged in so often. He's going to be at least 15%. And that's going to come at the expense of Jalen Waddle, who people are not going to want to play Waddle and Achan. If Achan is taking up 60% of the field, like, you're telling me that the other 30% of the field is going to play Jalen Waddle? Like, I just don't think that there's going to be that many people who play Waddle. So I think probably you're going to see 25 to 30% Waddle and 10 to 15% Olave. Just, housekeeping shit in terms of ownership that I see. JSN and Puka are both terrific plays, but finally appropriately priced. Like, wide receiver is finally there. Outside of Nico Collins, who probably is too cheap at 6,700, but the performance hasn't been there. Outside of that, like, I'm looking at this pricing, and this looks right to me. So finally, week 13, finally, we get pricing right on wide receivers. That's really nice to see. I agree with you that this is a very, you just play who you play with your quarterback. And therefore, like, I have interest in QJ and Lad McConkey because I really like Charger stacks to get away from the Vidal chalk. I think that Michael Wilson at 5,900, that's a relatively attractive price. Marvin Harrison's right there at 6K. That's fine. The Pittsburgh side, excuse me, DK Metcalf at 5,600, like, that's a really high game total. As not a really high game total, but on this slate, that's a high game total for Pittsburgh and Buffalo. So I don't mind that. But yeah, this pricing just looks fine. And I think that I'm just willing to just, whoever I go with my stack. But with that being said, like, the ownership here, I don't think that there should be that much ownership on JSN and Puka.
People are just forcing them. They're just forcing them.
Yeah, they're basically just saying, I'm spending money at one running back and then playing mid-range. And so I have the money to then spend a whole bunch of money at wide receiver. And I don't think that that's justified on this slate. Like, yes, they project well, but there's running backs that project really well. And there's a whole slew of mid-range here that you can stack with your quarterbacks. Yeah. So it'll bury me. Like Jay said, it's going to nuke.
Yeah. And here's the other thing that's happening because of that. So the other thing that's happening because of that, and it's just you haven't scrolled down far enough, is that it is forcing like this punt value chalk at wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Higgins is by far my favorite of that, mostly because I just think Stroud is under-owned because people are scared to play him. But people are also playing Mechie at 3,800, and they're also playing Adonai Mitchell, who we have projected very, very low, because you have to, if you don't double tight end, which I still don't understand why people won't double tight end instead of playing these guys. You kind of have to play either Higgins, Mechie, or Adonai Mitchell. Like, that's like what it ends up forcing. And to your point, one thing we do every week is if you mix running back and wide receiver in this range of outcomes so that we can see like where you should prioritize your spend up. Part of the reason I'm okay with Achan as opposed to JSN and Puka is because if you look at his 2x, 3x, 4x, it's just better. Like, he's 8,300, JSN's 9,500, Puka's 9K. Miami's playing New Orleans at home in a game they should probably dominate them in. Like, for small field, I just feel like not playing Achan is suicide. Like, I really feel that way tomorrow. For larger field, I think you can debate like a route by which JSN or Puka get there instead of Achan. But I still think 8,300 versus 9,500 and 99K is like a meaningful enough difference. where to me the priority spend up is Achane, and I don't mind fading JSN and Puka in most of my lineups. Like I'm totally fine if you just like don't force two of those guys. You allow yourself so much salary to get more balanced builds with your quarterback stacks than doing this kind of stars and scrubs shit with Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie. I'm just, I think
also just to point it out, like Christian McCaffrey is the same play as JSN, but at 5% ownership. And like Christian McCaffrey gets to face an inept Cleveland offense with Shadur Sanders at quarterback. Like Purdy is just going to be dumping off while Miles McBride is running at him in roid rage. I think that Christian McCaffrey is like a great play at 9,300. He's not going to have any ownership. And if you're going to be spending up, I just think you just spend up at running back this week. Like we have Achane, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, and Jonathan Taylor, who all project really well. And then we have a whole bunch of question marks kind of in the middle of the running back group. Like I'm not into it all. I'm not really into Kenneth Walker. So I just think that you get more bang for your buck at running back. And for wide receivers, we have just a slew of mid-range wide receivers that are available for stacks. And so I don't know that I want to pay up to JSN and Puka. Especially, and the thing with Puka as well is that like Devontae Adams just gets every single red zone target. So there's no reason why Devontae Adams 7,500 can't beat Puka Nacua for $1,500 less. So
I heard Evan Silva made the exact same point on Adams. Yeah. Like he's like, are we forgetting that Adams is like the red zone target every single time they get down there? The other thing that's interesting about JSN, and I have JSN in exactly one of my 7 lineups on DK tomorrow, and wouldn't you be surprised that is in my Darnold lineup? Like the fucking hilarious thing about JSN is that people keep playing him as a one-off, and I look, I'm not excited to play Darnold, but like Darnold is dirt cheap. Like JSN can easily kind of carry Darnold to the outcome you need. And so I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna play JSN, just do it with Darnold. Don't play him as a one-off. It doesn't make any sense to me to play him as a one-off, given the alternatives.
I agree with that. Let's hit some questions here really quick before we get on tight ends.
Yep.
Let's see. So this was about Jacoby Brissett. Still worth it if he's going to be throwing the ball 40 plus times. Totally agree. And Trey McBride, like we said, Trey McBride at 7,800. That may seem overpriced, but like he projects.
He's the 7th best. He has the 7th best projection on the slate for us.
He is literally, as far as projections that are not like elite, he's the top. He leads this secondary group of projections. So I'm with you. I think that
at a position where like every other player is nowhere close to him, right? Like at least with running back and wide receiver, you can okay, if I don't play Achane, I can play Bijan or CMC. At tight end, like it's McBride, and then there's like all the other dirt cheap tight ends. So it is, by the way, and add in the fact that he's going to be sub 10% owned. Maybe sub 5% owned. Maybe sub 5% owned. Like
after being like literally 40% owned. For 3 weeks straight.
So I think Brissett McBride is just like really, really. It's like weird to say sharp because of how chalky they've been, but it's like a sharp play this week.
I agree with that. Great week to piss off the shitty chalk. I kind of agree. I don't think the chalk is that good this week. I think that Achane is great. I'm fine with that. But like then, you can poke holes in nearly everyone else. And that's what you get when you don't have high totals across the board, is people just end up defaulting to what are like the quote unquote best plays. But the best plays are only the best plays if they separate from the field. There's not much separation this week. We're going to put 8 in the box, really make Danny Dimes beat us. Yeah, that's probably going to be right. And Houston's defense is good. In my last projections, I had Ward around 5%, but a few people in the industry love a game stack with him. What do you fellas think? And then mentions Ward, Dyke, Helm, and a game stack. Look, it's hard for me to love a Tennessee stack because they suck dick. They're bad. They're a really bad team. And I want them to be good because I kind of like Cam Ward. But like they just they're just bad. I think it was Direwalk pointed out they have scored an average of 3 points in the first quarter and 7 points in the first half in every single game this year. Like, that's just not a team that I necessarily love to stack. Granted, they are cheap. They allow you to do whatever you want with the rest of your salary, but it kind of goes back to what we just said. Do you really want to do that for the purpose of playing JSN plus HN plus, like, I don't know, Bijan or something like that? I mean, there are just better mid-range plays. Some weeks are going to be mid-range weeks. And I think that this is more of a mid-range week. So, Pablo, do you have thoughts on Tennessee? I think you probably agree with me.
Yeah, I think it's an overthink. I mean, like we just, if you just don't force the super expensive chalk, you don't have to play shitty stacks.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you can still play like one of your favorite of HN, JSN, Puka, or those guys. I happen to think HN is by far the strongest chalk based on a range of outcomes and matchup. But like, I don't know. I think like people are getting sucked into this feeling like you have to somehow jam in. It's this false sense of security because you have all these low total games of like, I have to force in JSN, HN, like Puka or whatever, because if I don't, two of those guys is going to bury me.
That's so sweet. My 4-year-old baked me some cake.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
That's super exciting. Thank you, baby. I love cake. That's so cool.
So, yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And for that matter, by the way, like, I don't know, like, is this a week I mean, why not just play fucking Stroud? I mean,
right.
Like, I totally get Stroud's going to be 15%, but he's not going to be 40%. Stroud is the same play that Brissett was 2 weeks ago. And we were like, well, Brissett's going to be 30%. And this week, because everybody has decided Stroud sucks, and because everyone's decided that Indianapolis is a wagon, which they are, like people are like, well, I can't play Stroud even though his passing options are cheap and he's 5K. Like, just play Stroud and instead of Cam Ward. I don't know. I just think it's kind of gross. I mean, the other gross stack nobody has mentioned, which I've seen mentioned in the industry a few times, which I'm not going to play, but if you want to go all the way down to some of the Cam Ward, you might as well consider this too, is Taylor with the Jets. Mm-hmm. You can play Taylor with the Jets, and you can play him with Mechie and Adonai Mitchell for like nothing, for like 11K.
That costs you like literally $11,000 or something.
Yeah.
This cake is kind of dry. My 4-year-old doesn't know how to bake yet. it's his best
baked with love. It's baked with love.
It's baked with love and not enough oil. So yeah, I'm not super into Tennessee.
Someone posted in the comment. Yeah, that was good. You know, the one thing to be aware of, because I don't know how closely you followed the slate before this talk, is that the weather in Cleveland is supposed to be like really, really bad. Like that's part of what's suppressing that total. So there's some concern around the industry of like, yes, CMC is going to get his volume, which he's always going to get his volume, but like the Browns defensive line is pretty fucking good, plus really, really bad weather. And so there's some, I think, fair cause for concern. I'm not saying like he's for sure still going to get fed. Like they're going to give CMC the ball a fucking million times. But, you know, I don't think it's a crazy thing to point out that it might matter.
All I hear when people say that weather is going to be bad is that running backs are going to get more volume. That's all I hear. And like, I mean, bad footing for running backs and wide receivers is also bad footing for, I don't know, the defense.
Yeah. And he's free, and he's going to be like sub 10%. So like to some degree, the ownership, a lot of this is like let's zoom out for 1 second and talk about like what we're trying to do in DFS, because it's like one of my favorite things to talk about. We're trying to exploit two things. We're trying to exploit ownership inefficiency, meaning the crowd is either too confident or not confident enough in certain plays, or we're trying to exploit price inefficiency. And when you combine those two things together, price and ownership and efficiency, you get leverage, right? So to some degree, like whenever people say yes, but in my head, I'm saying fair. So what would an efficient ownership be given those circumstances on this player, given his projection, right? And so like, I think Stroud, for example, an efficient ownership based on his projection would be like 25%.
So actually, we have a way of measuring that with the contest sims, which I ran before we did this pod. So
how close am I on Stroud?
Devon Achane, first off, his his efficient is 73.
That's why I'm saying you just lock him in small field. Like he's just too good of a play.
CJ Stroud at this ownership is 45.
Oh, it's only about half. And he's projected to be 15%, right? Yeah. So that's the point I'm making. This is perfect segue to show the tool off, right? Like, and you can sort by edge and it'll show you the biggest ones, but the point here is like, man, like just I feel like people like to focus on one ownership or value inefficiency instead of the other. Like people say this person's going to be over-owned instead of under-owned, or under-owned instead of over-owned, or they're saying this person projects too low instead of saying they project too high. And what this shows you is essentially based on our sims, who do we think, what would be an efficient exposure, right? And so like, I don't disagree that Stroud is fragile, but like, okay, let's say our sims are a little overconfident in him and our projection's a little too good on him. So what would be an efficient exposure on him? 35% maybe?
Right.
30%? But he's 15%. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Right? Yep. So similar to Achane, like people are like, I can't play Achane at 60%. I'm like, bro, like efficient ownership on an Achane is actually 67% or whatever. It's so like arguably you're actually getting leverage on him if he's only 60%. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to keep those things in mind when you're building your lineups. Like it's not, you can have a guy who's really owned who should be more owned, and you can have a guy who's really owned who should be less owned. It's not one way. It can go either way. And usually these things are driven by one of two things: an incorrect assumption on volume/usage, or an incorrect set of assumptions around fragility related to like game environment / how good or bad a guy is. Right. And so I think there's some like overconfidence this week in certain players. And I think there's like some underconfidence in guys who just project really, really well.
Yep. Absolutely agree. For those of you who have not used Contest Sims, you should do that. Find it here under NFL, go to the Contest Sims. All you got to do is just click the button up here to run it, and you'll get this table. But what you can see is like Stroud at high ownership can be projected to be the highest owned quarterback, still way under owned. And if you think that my projection is a little bit high, totally fine. He's still going to be under what his efficient ownership should be. Another guy who is way under is Tua, right? His exposure is 16%. Like, there's a reason why you should be playing those guys who are under owned. For running backs, if we sort by edge, the highest is Bijan Robinson. And then, hey, look at that, Ashin Jinty. And then Devon Achane. Like, those three guys are the top overall in terms of edge. But Achane is the one that shows up the most, followed by Bijan Robinson. If we look at wide receivers, Huzzah, Jaden Higgins, and my boy, Chris Olave, right? Like, Chris Olave's his effective ownership, his efficient ownership should be something like 40% owned at least, right? I don't even have him projected that much higher than the industry. So his expected ownership of 7% is a joke. Like, you should take advantage of that. Now, all of this being said, you don't have to build a lineup with all of the top overall edge, right? And that's the other thing that needs to be piggybacked on top of what Pablo just said, is that like you're building a lineup that balances the edge that you have as well as the volatility that you can accept. In smaller fields, up your volatility a bit, lower your edge, you're fine. In super large fields, you want to accept volatility. You want to lower your ownership and up your edge, right? So it's about combining players together. So like for instance, if you play Chris Olave tomorrow and he ends up to be 10% owned, you can pretty much like jam whatever bad chalk you want. And it just doesn't matter. Like the edge that he offers you, if you play him and Achane tomorrow, you have so much edge in terms of the efficient ownership for these players, along with Stroud. If you play Stroud, Achane, Olave tomorrow, you can fucking do whatever you want with the rest of the lineup, according to Paydirt Sims, right? So I just think that people overreact to this kind of stuff. I was talking to Czech earlier. When he took down that big tournament a couple of years ago. He just played like all chalk. And of course I did like the lineups, not players show, blah, 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 whatever. But like, it's about how you play a lineup together with players that have high edge and players that have high ownership. You just balance it all together. So,
Yep.
So let's jump back really quick
for a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's go back to tight ends really quick, and then we'll finish these things up.
So there's two things I want to say about tight end. First of all, like we've said this a million times, but McBride is a receiver, and he's our 7th highest median expectation of all flex players: running back, wide receiver, tight end. So the reason I think that matters is because you have to play tight end. And when you have to play tight end, if you have the one tight end who completely nukes the fucking slate and every other tight end just does like normal tight end things, and oh, by the way, you get that tight end at like 5% ownership, that's pretty valuable, right? Yeah. So I just think Trey McBride is in a league of his own right now. And I think if you can afford him, it naturally will give you a different build than a lot of other lineups that are forcing JSN and Puka. And I think it's a really nice way to build, and that's why I think you should also consider a Brissett stack. The other thing I'll say is that we have really heavy chalk condensing around 2 guys, basically, which are Aranda Gadsden the second. His dad played for the Dolphins when I was a child because I'm old, and Kyle Pitts Sr. I don't know who Kyle Pitts' father is, or if I've ever watched him play football before. But I just feel like more than any other week this week, like basically outside of Trey McBride, like just correlate your tight end. And I totally understand that Kyle Pitts has his projection at 4K. And if you're playing Cousins, go for it. But like, that is not a spot I'm going to be lowering my volatility through. Like I will not eat Kyle Pitts in a lineup to like lower my volatility. I'm not doing it. Like, I think we've seen this so many fucking times with this guy, and like, how likely am I going to be buried by chalk Kyle Pitts? I totally see his range of outcomes. And I know that we don't have him as like super heavy chalk. I think he may come in a little heavier than what we're showing here. But I would just rather play like Dalton Schultz with Stroud, or I would rather just play Gadsden with Herbert. Or I'd rather play like Warren as a bring back, or I'd rather play Bowers as a bring back, or I'd rather figure out a way to get traded McBride, or I'd rather play min-priced AJ Barner with Darnold and JSN and Darnold with AJ Barner, or I'd rather go all the way down to Colby Parkinson with Stafford and Puka. I think this is one avenue that's going to be underused this week. I could be wrong, but based on the ownership that we're seeing on people like AJ Barner and Colby Parkinson and Dalton Schultz, is for some reason people are just skinny stacking quarterbacks who really should be double stacked. Like, you should not skinny stack Matt Stafford, and you should not skinny stack. Darnold. Like, those are double stack quarterbacks. And for some reason, people are just not being like, I'll play like the really, really cheaply priced tight end with them. I have to play them as a skinny stack, or I have to play them with the receiver who's overpriced. And I just think it's like one really easy way to play this week is just to play one of these cheaper tight ends with their quarterback and their good receiver they have with them. Like, play Schultz with Higgins or Schultz with Collins and Stroud, or play Parkinson with Puka with Stafford, or play AJ Barner with JSN and Darnold. And that's I think just like an easy way to build that I don't think enough people are doing this week.
Yeah. I'll push back a little bit. I don't think that people are going to skinny with Parkinson and Barner. I think that the highest owned combos are probably going to be AJ Barner with JSN and Colby Parkinson with Puka. Like, I think that people are using these cheap tight ends to get to those guys in their stacks.
No, I wasn't saying they're skinning with the tight end. I'm saying they're skinning with the receiver.
Right.
And they're not throwing in the cheap tight end when it's like the easiest piece to correlate. It's bizarre to me that you wouldn't just throw in the cheap tight end.
Yeah, I think that people are likely going to be using the tight ends to get to those guys.
They should.
I agree with the Kyle Pitts thing as one-off. I have interest in Kirk Cousins. So I would like, if I'm going to play Kirk Cousins, I'm going to play him with Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney. I'm just going to move on with my life. That being said, I probably, in my singular lineup since I'm poor from this goddamn NFL season. Fucking this cold streak sucks. I don't know that I'm going to go with Cousins stack, but I mean, I agree. I think that with tight end this week, you're either playing, and again, Trey McBride, like we keep saying, is wide receiver. I just play him in the flex. Like 7,800, I just play him like instead of, I don't know, insert expensive player here. If you're not playing him, then I think that Brock Bowers makes for a very good comeback against the Las Vegas stack. I think that Tyler Warren makes for a very good comeback against a Houston stack. But then outside of that, man, you just stack with your quarterback. Whatever quarterback you choose, just lock in the tight end there. And then if you want to play Trey McBride, play him in the flex. Did that a couple weeks ago, and that was just terrific. So, yeah. It just this week, just play tight end with your quarterback. Just whatever optimizer you use, just say quarterback with tight end. I'm going to put an option into the portfolio manager tonight specifically for that option so that people can just do that.
Use the tight end.
Yeah, just use the tight end.
So if we zoom back out, like we usually talk about game environments, I don't have any game environments that I really like this week. No. I think like it's this isn't a week where I'm like considering any game stacks. Like most weeks I have one of my lineups, at least one, if not two, or usually like a near full blown game stack. This week I'm like not forcing bringbacks on teams with really low totals. Like I have a Herbert stack, and I'm not forcing a Bowers or a John D. Like if they fit, I don't have a problem with it. Don't get me wrong, but like I'm not forcing it on a team with a 15-point total. Right. And the other thing I think is just like get off this idea that like one easy way to get off of. People have this idea that they have to get some combination of HN, JSN, Puka. Like that's like stuck in everybody's head this week for some reason. Like it's like really, it's this false sense of security of like, well, I know that HN's going to do well, which I actually have all those guys. We've said a few times based on his sims and based off of his projection. I'm actually okay locking him, especially for small field for my shit. JSN and Puka, like, man, like, I'm not saying you should totally avoid them, but like the idea that you absolutely have to force them when you can play like way lesser owned guys for cheaper prices who also correlate with your quarterback, who from a range of outcome standpoint, 2x, 3x, 4x are actually like just as good, if not better. I don't know. Like I don't find it that hard and to do that. And maybe, you know, it'll be another chalk slate where like some combination of Puka, JSN, HN buries everybody. And it's very possible. It's happened a number of times this year. But given the number of alternatives we have this week, especially when you consider correlation with quarterbacks, like I would just play Puka if you're playing Stafford, play JSN if you're playing Darnold. But if you're not doing that, then don't force those two guys.
Yeah, I agree. When we look at the top ranges here, which by the way, really quick, I found a bug in my range of outcomes code for stacks where this ownership is not representative of these stacks actually. So I need to fix that in the morning.
Yeah.
I found it last week, but it was Thanksgiving.
Look at Stroud. I mean, it just like sticks out, right? And
yeah.
That's why when you ran by edge, like he should be chalky. He should be chalkier.
Yeah. It's just too cheap. He's $2,000 too cheap. That stack is $2,000 too cheap. Yeah. And that's something that we have said week in and week out. There's been consistently something that could give you a free $2,000.
Yeah.
The other stack that sticks out here is just Arizona. Yeah. I know that their team total is not super high, but both stacks of Brissett, Wilson, McBride, Brissett, Harrison, McBride, both of those are just like they're just good plays.
I just think like Brissett, Wilson, McBride feels like a very easy approach this week. I mean, the only harder thing about it is that the Stroud one's 15.6 and the Brissett, Wilson, McBride is 19.5.
Right.
So it's obviously like a lot more expensive, but if you're okay, like not having to force those super expensive guys, it's not that hard to fit.
Right. Totally agree. All right, let's hit some questions here, and then we'll drop things out. So we have a flood here, I think. Let's see.
Right.
Oh shit, we got fucking Glee in the chat. What's up, Glee? How you doing, my dude?
It's Glee.
Let's see. Okay, so why not just not play anyone over 8,300? Stops you from playing punts. Totally agree. We've been preaching that through the entirety of this show. Who are we stacking? For the most part, I think that we're mostly on Arizona, Rams, Houston, Chargers. I mean, there's a lot of different stacks we could go through. We talked about quarterbacks a little bit earlier. If you weren't watching, this will be reloaded onto the YouTube. Let's see. I want to know why someone like Stroud playing on the road against an improved Colts secondary. Why is he highly owned in MME? It's because he's 5K. Like the
his pairing partners are all 1 to 2K too cheap.
Right. So, like, if you look at the way that I have these projections built out, whether you agree with my projections or not, they're pretty close to what the industry has. And we have, like, all these guys projected for 49, 47, 46, 45. And then you have these two Houston stacks, which project for 44 and 43.54. And you basically get, it's $2,000 cheaper than a Charger stack, $2,000 cheaper than Arizona. It's $1,500 cheaper than this Charger stack. It's more than $2,000 cheaper than a Seattle stack, and it only projects for one less. So it's like when you have a quarterback and stacking partners that are that cheap, I mean, just from a DFS perspective, that's something that you have to consider. They're just too cheap. You don't need him to be a world beater. The reason why you play him is so that you can afford the JSNs and the Pukas and the HNs, like all of his studs. It's an equation, right? So that's why he's going to be higher owned. Walker's going to be over-owned. Hand-building lineups feel so safe to click his name. Totally agree with that. Totally agree. I think Walker's going to be – he's the easiest fade for me by a pretty decent amount. Stroud, HN, or cash locks. Damn straight. Totally agree with that. You were optimal in the millie on Thanksgiving while you should have been in the fucking millie. Let's see. Parkinson probably gets steamed. I agree with that, actually. I do think that Parkinson ends up getting steamed a bit. Do I trust Warren with dimes? Not necessarily. But, I mean, I think it's an option. I'm not, to be clear.
I will say one thing about that game. I have been debating, like, for whatever reason, some places in the industry, we have a pretty good projection on Pittman. Like, we have a pretty good projection on Pittman. He's been pretty strong. Like, he's not an alpha, but he's like an almost alpha, right? And the industry is really high on Pierce for whatever reason. Like, he's super volatile. Like, he's very boom bust, right? Pierce has games when he gets 23 points, and it's because of how he scores. Like, he catches those long balls, right? I don't think you have to force bringbacks. I have thought probably way too much over the course of the last 24 hours on if I am bringing a bringback, whether that's Pittman, Pierce, or Warren. I don't have a great feeling about any of them. I guess I kind of like Pittman the most just because I feel like his usage should be pretty good no matter what. I mean, Houston's defense is obviously very strong. But I'm just going to point out that Pierce is looking like he's showing up in some of the optimals around the industry. So that's interesting. Yeah,
I've heard there has been a lot of chatter on Pierce recently. From like high level analysis guys. Matt Harmon has been harping on him, and the high level fantasy guys he's going to catch some steam.
Yeah.
Let's see. Bucks Cardinals is my favorite game of the week. I'm all over Brissett. Totally agree with that. Let's see. A lot of people talking shit about CJ Stroud. Look, I don't give a fuck about CJ Stroud. Don't get me wrong here. Pablo and I are not CJ Stroud fans. No. He's just 5K.
No.
We're just good. We're just DFS players.
This is like not opinion. This is just math. Like this is not like I actually don't. There's very few there are players I like and don't like just because they're fun to watch and they're like really good athletes. But when I'm trying to win in DFS, like that doesn't matter. Like that's irrelevant to me.
We're just playing in the field. Seems like you want a min piece with JSN Walker to get correlation to be contrarian. Yeah. So I can play $7,100 Justin Jefferson. Like $7,100 is going to be like 1% owned. I mean, if you can play arguably the best wide receiver in football at 1% owned at $7,100 in a game stack correlation spot, fucking do it. I don't care. I'd rather play him than play Puka, just for the ownership and everything like that. So I totally agree with that. All right. Final thoughts. Final thoughts from you, Mr. Pablo. Do you have a play? Do you have a stand that you're going to hold on? Do you have anything that you feel should be said?
No, I'm look, as is well known, I play smaller field, so I'm spreading my exposure on stacks this week. Like I feel pretty strongly that HN is just really, really good chalk this week, and I'm fine for small field, just locking him in. And then I don't feel like that strongly about the stacks outside of just making sure that my lineup is more correlated. It's like a little bit an old school week in that I'm correlating more than I have in the prior several weeks.
Yeah.
Right now I have a Brissett, I have I think one or two Strouds, I have a Stafford, I have a Darnold, I have a Herbert. I'm actually playing one lineup in the late slate because I kind of wanted a little more Herbert and I couldn't fit him comfortably in the main slate. So what I would just say this week is don't be afraid to. My stand is really just don't be afraid to fade Puka and JSN outside of stacks. I just don't think you need to force them. And I think if you correlate outside of using those two guys, you're kind of auto differentiated. The other thing I think is maybe a really obvious thing to say, but I feel like Trey McBride is just a super sick play this week, at a position where he can separate from the rest of the alternatives at low ownership. I don't think he's going to come in as low as we think he will, because I think it's kind of obvious that you can play Brissett, McBride, Wilson, but they're not going to be as owned as they should be just because I don't know. I think some of it is everyone's just waiting for Brissett to be shitty. I think that's some of it. And I think people respect Tampa, and I respect Tampa too, but they're a pass funnel. They're not they're a pass funnel. They've been a pass funnel for 3 years now. So those are my high level thoughts. I think they're super spicy. I mean, maybe my spiciest thought is that I think James Cook is that's the one game that I feel like is maybe being a little overlooked. I feel like people are just not focusing on Buffalo, Pittsburgh. And I think James Cook, and if you want to get spicy, you can mini correlate him with DK Metcalf coming across opposite him. I think James Cook, like you said, is in no man's land pricing wise. He's not up there with the super expensive guys, and then he's not in the Breece Hall, Walker, Vidal, cheaper guys. He's in that higher end, but expensive enough where it's uncomfortable. And man, if he goes off in that game, which actually has a pretty good total, not a good total, but relative to the other games in a competitive game scenario, he could be a GPP winner. So that's probably I think the sneakiest play on the slate, in my opinion, is James Cook.
My main stance is that I think that Kenneth Walker is a bad play. At 35% owned, I think Kenneth Walker is not somebody that I really want a part of. I echo your thoughts on Puka and JSN. Just not being worth the ownership. Fine plays, but I'd just rather spend up at running back this week, play mid-range at wide receiver, rather than the other way around. That's mostly those are mostly my stands. A couple more questions as we go in. Warren might be sick and might not play. I usually do my last run on stuff like that in the morning, so I haven't seen anything, unfortunately. But if he's sick, then that just opens up another cheap tight end that you can play with a quarterback, right? So that's fine.
It'll bring Pierce and Pittman. Pierce for sure more chalky if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How's Jacksonville offense going to look moving forward the next month or so? Oh man, you're talking to a certified Trevor Lawrence fucking hater. I think they're bad. I thought that they were going to be bad before the year started. I thought Travis Hunter was kind of the easiest call to not be an impact player year one. I think it's going to be a bust overall. So I think Jacksonville offense will look bad because Trevor Lawrence isn't very good and their offensive coordinator is kind of dull. So I think they'll look bad. That's my no ball stance. Last question. Everyone loves the 3-day Thanksgiving slate. Why not play it every week with the afternoon only? That is a great question. The main answer is because the contests suck. Unless you have a decent bankroll, you really can't get down action that matters on the 3 games. So They're good every week. I'll take it one step further for you. And I'll say, if you really want edge, you should play the Thursday through Monday slates and just fade the fucking Thursday game every single week. Like that's like free fucking money. That pays the big for you. So if you're into like,
you just have to be like into like the golf sweat where you're waiting like 5 days for
I mean, like you got to tie your money up for 5 days, and that kind of sucks. But like, if you're into finding contests that are weak and like there's actual edge to be had, those Thursday through Monday slates, man, you get to take advantage of late swap, get to take advantage of people stacking up games that don't fucking matter. Like, you get to take advantage of people making really bad decisions and not playing enough chalk. You could arguably just cut a Thursday through Monday game down to like 3 games and be in a great spot. Hit that like button, y'all. Don't be rude. Totally agree. Like and subscribe. I never say that shit. I'm so fucking bad at promoting the YouTube channel, but I really need to do it more. All right, that's gonna be it for us. This is overall a great slate. I think the chalk is gonna get fucking kicked in the teeth, and my cold streak will finally come to a goddamn end. I will make money this week in a big way. I will make $40. just hopefully I don't lose X amount of thousands of dollars this week like I have for the last 12 weeks straight. Yo, Lippy, just hit me up in the Discord. Or wait, are you in Discord? I don't remember. Hit me up on Twitter. I know you called me on Twitter. Anyway, thank you guys so much. This has been the Slate Talk from Paydirt. Oh, by the way, actually, wait, shit. This I do actually have to do. If you don't have a subscription, which there are 331 people watching this, I just checked numbers. There are 220 people subscribed to Paydirt. So there are at least 110 of you who are not subscribed. Come grab a subscription. $40 a month for everything on the site, including the models that we showed off here today. $240 for access through May 30th. This is the NBA all access, but it gets everything on the site. $20 for a week, $5 for a day. Come try things out. I'm sure that you won't be disappointed. If you are subscribed, or if you're not, then come join us in the Discord over at the Paydirt Community Discord. You can find the link right there. If you enjoyed everything, give me a like, give me a subscription. Just give me your money, I guess. Otherwise, hopefully you win money tomorrow. I appreciate all of you. I love the support. Thank you guys so much. I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Let Mariah Carey shine. I'm going to go downstairs and play some Christmas carols. I'm very excited. So thank you guys so much. This has been James and Pablo for the Slate Talk, and we will talk to you guys next time.